Husks and blossoms of the pomegranate, shells of nuts and the kernels, the seventh year applies to them and to their proceeds. The dyer may die for himself and may not die for payment, because one may not trade with seventh year produce, or with firstborn, or with trumos, or with carrion, or with trefa, or with reptiles, or with creeping things. And one may not buy field vegetables and sell them in the market, but one may gather them, and his son sells them for him. If he took for himself and some was left over, he may sell them. If one bought a firstborn for his son's feast or for a pilgrimage festival and he does not need it, he may sell it. Hunters of wild animals, birds, and fish who chance upon unclean species may sell them. Rabbi Yehuda says, also, if anyone chanced upon it, he may take it and sell it, provided that this is not his trade. But the Chachamim forbid this. Young sprouts of the service tree and of the carob tree, the seventh year applies to them and to their proceeds. Bior applies to them and to their proceeds. The lulavim of the terebinth, of the pistachio tree, and of the white thorn, the seventh year applies to them and to their proceeds. Bior does not apply to them or to their proceeds, but Bior applies to the leaves, as since they fall off from their stem. Okay.
Okay. Mishna Vav Havered, that's a rose. A kofer, it is which is called in Romit, they call it a cyprus. Is that right?
Right, Cyprus.
Cyprus. The kataf, it's the which some say is the persimmon tree, and some say it's straf shel eitz bosem, which is the which is a kind of resin, I think. And lotim is lotus.
Yes, according to Rambam, ketaf is balsam. According to other, the resins of fragrant trees.
Right.
Seraphis, which Uncleus renders as katafa, and that's what it says.
Okay, so all of these things, these are not eaten, but they're used for their fragrances. They're used for perfumes. Okay, yesh lahem Sheviis, so they also have dinei Sheviis. But lidmeihem Sheviis, and if you have excess and you sell it, then the money gets Sheviis kedusha.
They're saying here that perfumes in general, if they come from some of these fruits, that they're Sheviis, they're considered.
Yeah, and this is look. You can only use for perfume something that is intended for perfume. So roses is a great example. Roses have there's no food value to a rose,
right?
But there is perfume value to a rose. Now you could also say lemons have got perfume value, but lemons are meant to be eaten. So to use a shmita lemon for perfume would not be allowed.
Right. So
that's degrading it from food.
Has to be a fragrance, a flower, or whatever that's used to kick out, or whatever.
That is specifically for fragrance,
food.
Right? So that's
right, for food. Used for food. You said that be used for food and also a fragrance, right?
No, the roses are not used for food, and we're saying that,
they're not. Right.
Yeah, roses have got kedusha Sheviis, v'lidmeihem Sheviis, and if you sell them, then they also have the money also has Sheviis kedusha.
Explain to me one more time, please, why a rose, because it has a fragrance, or a cypress, or is considered Sheviis.
Right, exactly, because of that reason, because they have a fragrance. Because you can make perfumes out of it, and because they are intended for use as perfumes. And that's really the chiddush of the Mishnah, is that it's not just if it's food value. We said earlier that if it has food value for humans or for animals, and also if it has use as a medication. We're going to see today about medications, but this is but our roses the smell is enough to give them the kedusha Sheviis, whereas wood doesn't have. If you're taking something to burn, there's no kedusha Sheviis in that. Right. Okay, but the flowers have got kedusha.
It has kedusha because it's something that you can sell, something you use for.
It's not because you can sell, but because it has it has that use as a fragrance. If you want your house to smell nice, you get a bunch of roses and you stick them in a vase on your table, and it looks nice and it smells nice. But it's not just the looks nice; it's specifically the smells nice. That's important about it. And
We
and
had some.
therefore if you have roses in your garden, then technically I guess you have to allow people to come in and cut roses at will,
So I
because
didn't think I have, like I have a pomegranate tree. It's a miniature, and we've spoken about this
mm,
before. That it's not edible. So I would think like I want to take this thing out, and it's not edible. But the rose bush that we have, we really
mm,
couldn't put it down during Sheviis because it has.
yeah, because that well, I mean, again, that we saw that with the fruits of Sheviis, that once they start to form, so if you have buds on the thing, that would probably be the
Right.
equivalent, and then you would not be allowed to cut that down.
And if you have a
You know,
tree,
what you could what
we
you could do is,
discussed.
to, is cut it in order to take the flowers into your house. That would be allowed. But instead of cutting it right by the node, which is the normal way of cutting roses, you have to cut it in the middle between two nodes, so that it's clear that you're not cutting it in order to prune it and do good for the plant.
Right.
You have to cut it in a non-professional way.
The node would be, you're talking about a thorn, the thistles that are there, the thorns that are there.
I mean, the normal way that you cut a rose is, just by where the branch is, as something where a leaf juts out, or where a branch comes out. So then you cut just above that.
They're not, no, we're not talking about the thorn at all. We're talking about where the leaf would come
Not
out.
nothing to do with thorns. Nothing to
Right.
do with thorns. It's where the leaf or the branch comes out. That's called a node.
And if someone has a tree, can't be a fruit tree because you can't cut down a fruit tree, but you have a tree and you want to sell firewood and you want to cut down that tree and use the
There's
firewood.
no caduceus spheres on that.
So you could use it for whatever you want. No,
Correct.
as long as it's
We
not
saw
fruit.
that in the context of the sycamore, that they were using it for building supplies. So no problem with that. The only problem that they had was with the virgin sycamore, which cutting it for the first time it encourages its growth. So they said you can't do that in
Right.
the Shemitah.
Okay.
Okay. Now, continuing our Mishnah, Rabbi Shimon Omer ein lakataf shvius mipnei she'eino pri. Says resin. Well, the resin that comes out of the tree is basically the wood. It comes and it doesn't have and because it's coming out of the wood of the plant, there's no kedusha shvius in the wood, and this is actually halacha.
What happens with a tree that has sap, like
Yeah,
syrup?
sap resin, exactly the same thing. So
Right.
maple. Now that's an interesting question. Is maple syrup? Does maple syrup have kedusha shvius? And interesting. Lichora, if it's coming out of the sap of the tree, um, if it's coming out of the sap of the tree, I mean, according to what Rabbi Shimon is saying, it's not a fruit, and therefore it's not. Therefore, there's no shvius in it. Not that maple trees grow in Israel, do they?
I don't think so. I don't know too much about trees, but I don't think
Yeah.
so.
But if there were another kind of tree whose sap was edible and
Mhm.
interesting. Okay. Zain vered chadash shekvasha b'shemen yashan. So here we're talking about a rose that's got kedusha shvius,
Mhm.
and and we're now in the Shemitah year, and you're putting it to preserve in oil from the previous year, from 60 years. So there's no Shemitah attached to the oil. Okay, so now it's been soaking in the oil. Does the oil get kedusha shvius in it? And the answer, says the Mishnah, yilaket is a varied. It's not. You can just take out the rose. The rose remains with its kedusha shvius, but the oil does not. However, in the reverse case for yashan, the chadash, if you have an old rose in new oil, chayav bebiur, then the oil now effectively takes on the kedusha shvius from the rose, because the flavor of, or the fragrance of the rose. Interesting. The old rose is the one that they say is the one that has the smell, and or maybe it's the new oil that is more susceptible to absorbing smell, or fragrance, or fragrance, or taste. Um, and there it says that the oil is now, it now has kedusha shvius, and it's chayiv in biur. So at the time that the roses are no longer available in the field, now the oil is subject to biur.
It says and the oil is the rose may be taken out of the oil before beer time, and the oil is not subject to beer since a new rose did not impart flavor to old oil unless it's soaked in it for a long time.
Right.
So, wow.
But in the reverse case, when you have the old rose and the new oil, then it does give. Well, Kati says that the old rose has got a strong taste, and it's absorbed very quickly into the new oil.
Mm.
Okay. Charuvin, carobs. Charuvin chadashim, shikavashin b'yayin yashan, b'yashanim b'chadash. So I guess what they had a recipe for preserving carob in wine. Okay, so you put them into old wine, or you put so the carobs are Shemitah carobs and the wine is regular wine. If the wine was the old one, then or the other way around, if you have old carobs in new wine, in either case chayav and babir, because say that the carob flavor gets imparted to the wine very quickly, and it doesn't matter which one's the old and which one's the new. Okay, zehaklal, and this here is the more important point. Anything that imparts a taste, and that's also our general principle in kashrus. We have this principle of a nosen tam.
Mm-hmm.
If something gives a taste, then tam ke'ikar. There we have the taste is the important thing. We learned this in our kashrus shirim as well. Tam ke'ikar. So we have to treat the other substance as if it is the first one, and if there's beer for the object that was pickled inside the other chayav lebayir, then the dinim of beer also take over. Min b'she'eno mino, when they're different types. Min b'mino kol shehu. However, if it's like in like, so if you made orange juice, I don't know, from if you made, I'm just trying to think of a hechatinsa. Let's say you got some lemon juice that you squeezed from Shemitah lemons, and or the lemons may be a bad example because I don't know if lemons actually have biur, but let's say wine's a better example.
Okay.
So if you have Shemitah wine that you mixed with old wine,
Right.
okay, that whole wine takes on the din of the Shemitah wine because even if it's just a drop of the Shemitah wine, because kol shehu, the smallest amount, min b'mino, it's not, you can't say, oh, it's can I taste the Shemitah wine in here? So therefore, it's the whole mixture has to be treated as the Shemitah wine,
Right.
and it's chayav in biur. Okay. Sheviis oseres kol shehu b'mina v'shelo b'mina v'nosin tam. So it repeats the principle over here that that the Shemitah affects everything that is min b'mino. It transmits its kedusha even in the smallest amount. But if it's in a different min, then it's b'nosin tam, which we have the rule of thumb of 1 in 60. Now, the interesting is in kashrus. I think it's Rabbi Yehuda who holds that min b'she'eno mino is b'kol shehu. But we hold in kashrus lahalacha that not like him. We hold also 1 in 60 for min b'mino.
Why would
So,
that be? Yeah.
so for example, if you had some, let's say, milk from a treifa animal, fell into a vat of kosher milk,
Mm-hmm.
and was less than 1 in 60, Rabbi Yehuda would say that's aser. But lahalacha we say it's mutar if it's less than 1 in 60. So I'm not sure if Shemitah is a different case over here, or if we pass in halacha not like Rabbi Yehuda, and in any case that even min b'mina we say 1 in 60. I don't know what to say here. Kahati doesn't give a psak halacha.
It doesn't say what the halacha is.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Ches Aleph. Klal Gadol Amru B'Shvius. Here's another big general rule. Kol hamiyuchad lemachal adam. If something is specifically for human food, ein osin mimena melug mila adam. You cannot turn that into a poultice, they called it. a some sort of a an ointment.
It says flour and spices designed to soften the wound for humans, or needless to say, cattle.
Right. But ein tzarich lomar lebahema. Certainly, you can't use it for animals. Okay. So once it's human food, you cannot degrade it for a lesser use, even as a medication for humans. Kol she'enu miyuchad lemachal adam. However, if something is not specifically human food, or mimena maluk mal adam, then so let's say you've got animal fodder that's from Sheviis produce, you're allowed to take that and turn it into some sort of an ointment to put on a person. Aval lo lebahema, but you can't use that as the ointment for the behemoth. You can only use it as food for the behemoth.
Because it's food, they can't use it for the
Right,
human.
because from the behemoth's perspective, it's food, and degrading it to a poultice is hashchata. It's just it's a degradation of the kedusha shvius. If it's something that's not for food for a person or for an animal, if he then uh, had a machshava, he said, okay, we're going to turn this into human food, and for animal food. If he considers it for both human and animal food, then there are two chumras of. So if it's for human food, then there's the chumrah is that you can't turn it into a poultice, right? Into an ointment. What's the chumrah of animal food? You're not allowed to cook it.
Uh,
Animals don't eat cooked food. Animals eat raw. So therefore, so you've got both of these chumras now. If he considers this just for fuel,
right.
okay, then it's like wood. So three different species of hyssop over here, which in general are not used as human food or animal food, but you could use it for. And remember, this is the same hyssop that we use for sprinkling the
Right.
para.
Right. Power.
Okay, so that is so that is in general it's considered just as regular wood, but if it's soft enough, it can be edible. I think that's za'atar, by the way.
Right.
Za'atar is one of these is from hyssop, and so if it's considered for human food, then it takes on that kedusha shvius.
Isn't there some food that we have that some like you use for an ointment or something like that? Sometimes you get a burn or you get this or that, and sometimes people will say, "Oh, put some of this on or put some of that on," or
Um,
that would be us then.
yeah, so that's an interesting thing about olive oil. Olive oil is used both for food and for putting on your skin.
Right. Right.
So can you take Shemitah olive oil and put it on your skin? And I think the answer is yes, because we say that sicha is kashtia. It's like drinking. So I think it is permitted to put Shemitah olive oil on.
And nobody drinks olive oil straight. It's always
No,
yeah. It's like we talked
no,
about
you
that
put
one
it on your
time.
salad.
Right. Right. But it's not just. We talked about that one time in another Mishnah about olive
Yeah,
oil. I
they
think there
they,
was
they
something
dip their
else.
bread in it.
Right. There was something else also. Olive oil and I just forgot what it was. I can't remember. Certain vinegar. We talked about vinegar also. That nobody just drinks vinegar. But they mix
Right.
oil and vinegar together, and then they have salad dressing. So
Yeah.
that's true. Okay. All right. Good. Okay. We are in. We are in Daled Zion.
Hmm?
Right.
Yes.
We're talking about figs here. From when on, when one eat fruit trees in the seventh year, when unripe ones, when they are reddened, when one eats his bread with them in the field. Once they began ripening, he may take them into his house, and also in the other years of the 7 year cycle, he is liable to tithe. Unripe grapes, once they have produced liquid, one may eat his bread with them in the field. Once they have ripened, he may take them into his house. So also in the other years of the 7th year cycle, he is liable to tithe. Olives, once they yield one revius per saw, they may be crushed and eaten in the field. They may yield half a log. They may be pressed and used as an ointment in the field. If they have produced a third, they may be pressed in the field and taken into his house. So also in the other years of the 7 year cycle, they are liable to tithe, and on the other and all other fruit trees, their season is the tithes, and also the season in regard to the Sheviis.
Right.
I was just saying, my wife does make sometimes. She makes olive oil with za'atar. to dip bread in and
Yes,
fry.
we like doing that also for Shabbos. For instead of dipping it into the salt, we'll dip it into.
There are so many spices in Israel. It's like I can't
Mm.
believe I can't remember the names of all of them. And I like when I go to like Machane Yehuda and they have it all in the Ivrit and I don't know what all of them are. It's really frustrating to ask all the time. There's
Okay.
so many.
Kilayim Gimel base.
Gimel base. Okay. What, I missed a page. I just had it right in front of me. Okay, here we go. No species of seeds may be sown in one bed, but any species of vegetables may be sown in one bed. Mustard and small smooth peas are species of seeds. Large peas are a species of vegetables. A border which measured and 1 handbreadth high and diminished remains valid, since it was valid at the beginning. A furrow or a water channel 1 handbreadth deep may be sown with 3 seeds, one on one side and one on the other, and one in the middle. If one point, if the point of a row of vegetables enters into a field of different vegetable, it is permitted because it is apparent that this is the end of his field. If his field was sown with vegetables and he wishes to plant in a row of different vegetable, Rabbi Yishmael says only if the furrow is open from one end of the field to the other. Rabbi Akiva says the length of 6 tefachim and its full width. Rabbi Yehuda says the width of the sole of a foot. If one plants 2 rows of cucumbers, 2 rows of gourds, 2 rows of Egyptian beans, it is permitted. 1 row of cucumbers, 1 row of gourds, 1 of Egyptian beans is forbidden. 1 row of cucumbers, 1 row of gourds, 1 of Egyptian beans, and 1 row of cucumbers, but Eliezer permits, but the Chachamim forbid. Okay. Tevel Yom. Okay. Um, Base bait. Concerning a pot that is full of liquids and was touched by a Tevel Yom, if the liquid was of truma, the liquid is disqualified. But if the pot is tahor, if it was a liquid of chulin, everything is tahor. But if his hands were unclean, everything is tameh. This is the stringency that applies to unclean hands over a tevel yom. There is also a stringency that applies to a tevel yom over unclean hands. While an uncertainty concerning a tevel yom renders truma puzzle, an uncertainty concerning unclean hands is considered tahor.
There's an interesting thing with the Tful Yom and the Yadayim are both a Sheni Latuma,
Right.
right?
Right.
But the one's got the Chumrah is that with a Safek, the Tful Yom if a Tful Yom touched Truma, we go Lechumrah on the Truma. Okay, but Yadayim, we go Safek for the Yadayim Lekula. However, the Tful Yom, if touching liquids, he's not matame them. Chulin liquids, that is.
That's right. Right.
Whereas hands touching chulin liquids turn them into a rishon.
Concerning a porridge made of truma and the garlic and oil of chulin, if a tevel yom touch part of them, he is rendered all of them puzzle. If the porridge was of chulin and the garlic and the oil were of truma and the tevel yom touch part of them, he has rendered puzzle only the place of his touch. If the garlic was the majority, we follow the majority. And Rabbi Yehuda says when they form a mass in the bowl. But if it was separated in the mortar, it is tahor, since he wants its separation. And the same applies to all other pounded foods if they were pounded with beverages. But concerning those foods which are normally pounded with vegetables, if he pounded them without beverages, even if they are like a mass in the bowl, they are treated like a round cake of pressed figs. If a porridge and flat cake were made of chulin and an oil of truma was floating on top of them, and a tevel yom touched the oil, he has rendered puzzle only the oil. But if he stirred it wherever the oil flowed, it is rendered puzzle.
Okay. Kalim Chavzayin Gimel.
If one made a piece of material with two tefachim of cloth and one of sack, 3 tefachim of sack and one of hide, and 4 tefachim of hide and one of matting, it is tahor. But if you made a piece of material with 5 tefachim of matting and one of hide, 4 of hide and one of sack, 3 of sack and one of cloth, it's tameh. This is the rule. Whatever has a different material attached to it, if it is from a material more stringent than it is tameh. If it is from a material less stringent, it is tahor. If one trims any of these materials into a piece measuring 1 by 1, 1 tefach by 1 tefach, it is tameh. If one trims from the bottom of a basket a piece measuring one tefach by one tefach, it is tameh. If he trimmed a piece from the sides of the basket, Reb Shimon rules that it is tahor because the sages say if one trims a piece of a basket measuring one tefach by one tefach in any place, it is tameh. Okay? Regarding a worn-out sifter or sieve that was prepared for sitting, Rabbi Akiva rules it tameh, but the Chachamim rule it tahor unless one trims it. A child's chair that has legs, even if it lacks the height of a tefach, it's tameh. Concerning a shirt of a child, Reb Eliezer says any size, but the Chachamim say until it has the prescribed size and it is measured double. Okay. Shavuos.
Shavuos.
Okay. I adore you that when you know testimony from me, that you will come and testify from me. They are exempt because the oath preceded the testimony. If he stood in the synagogue and said, "I adore you that you, if you know testimony before me, that you come and testify for me," when they are exempt, unless he directs himself to them.
Now you can't just speak to a mass of people and administer an oath to a group to a group. He has to do each one individually.
Right. If he said to two, "I adore you so and so, that if you know testimony for me, that you come and testify for me," and they replied, "We swear that we do know any that we don't that don't know any testimony for you," and they know a hearsay testimony, or one of them was a relative or a person ineligible to testify, they are exempt.
Right? Because they couldn't have testified anyway.
If he sent
because their knowledge was not enough to make a testimony. Okay.
That was it. Okay.
Rosh Hashanah.
My wife said yesterday, she said, we haven't had any cookies, we haven't had any cake, and nothing in the house. I said, good. So she says, I think that's it. I'm not going to eat any. I don't think I'm going to do that anymore. I said, now be careful what you say, because if you're going to take this vow, that you're going to take that you're never not going to eat this anymore, you're finished. That's it.
Well, you're as her husband, you can annul it.
I don't have to. Yeah, I know, but I could I could get in trouble, if I don't. So I know. And she's all right. So I won't say anything. She said, all right.
And you can only annul things that cause that are between husband and wife. So if she's just inconveniencing herself, you don't have the ability to do hafara. But if it's going to make her cranky and irritable, then that then that would fall under the gather.
I knew that. I lost my tissue here. Rosh Hashanah.
So it's the last one.
Right, that's what I thought. Yeah, that's why I took it out probably. Okay. The order of the shofar blasts are 3 sets of 3 blasts each. One duration of a tehiyah is like 3 teruahs. The duration of a teruah is like 3 quavers. If one blew the first tehiyah and prolonged the second tehiyah, and the duration of 2 tekiyos, it counts as only 1. And one recited the blessings, and later a shofar became available to him, he should blow a teruah 3 times. Just as the chazan is obligated, so is every individual obligated. Rabbi Gamliel says the chazan discharges the congregation's obligation. Okay.
Adon Alach, Masechas Rosh Hashanah.
Okay.
Sinus.
Oh, I took out the wrong one. Oh, gee. Okay. I just have to find it. That's all. Which I will find. When do we mention the powers of rain? Reb Eliezer says from the first Yom Tov of the festival, and Reb Yeshua says from the last Yom Tov of the festival. Reb Yeshua said to him, since rain is but a symptom of curse during the festival, why mention it? Reb Eliezer replied to him, I too did not say to request rain, but merely to mention it. He causes the wind to blow and the rain to fall in its proper season. He responded, if so, one should always mention the powers of rain. We do not request rain except close to the rainy season. Reb Yehuda says of those Kazanim who stand before the ark on the last of Yom Tov of the festival, the last Kazan mentions the powers of rain.
The festival is Sukkot.
Sukkot, right. And the last Kazan mentions the powers of rain, but the first cousin does not mention it.
In other words, that's Musaf, not Shachris. So on Shmini Atzeres, you say during Musaf, not during Shachris.
On the first Yom Tov of Pesach, the first cousin mentions the power of rain, but the last cousin does not. Until when do we request rain? Until Pesach is over. Reb Meir says until Nisan is over, and it is said he caused the rain to fall for you, the early rains and the late rains, in the first of the months. So now we have we changed right by Pesach. It
Yeah,
was
we change everything by Pesach lahalacha.
Rita Tal and
Yeah.
the other thing.
So the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda in the Reisha.
But it's interesting. It says when summer comes. If you look in the Siddur, it says when summer, but it's not summer yet. It's really spring. But the way,
Um, I don't know if you felt the temperature in the last couple of days,
yes, I
but
have.
that seemed pretty summery to me. Eh,
My wife wanted to go to the botanical gardens, and I said, "Boy,